He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome to Coast View, the show that celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi a better place to live, work, and play. I'm privileged today that we have Janie O'Keefe, who's the Executive Director for Disability Connection. She is extraordinarily well qualified and has a great history of working in the area of disability here in coastal Mississippi. I look forward to hearing her story. Good morning, Janie.
Good morning, Ricky.
It's great to see you. Thanks for joining us today. We're using Zoom for our Facebook audience. We had a little hiccup with Skype and our connection with the station, so we're using Zoom to get this show in. So hope it doesn't feel too awkward for those who are regular watchers on the Facebook or YouTube channels. So let's start from the beginning, Janie. I want to try to understand, first of all, what is the organization that you're executive director of, Disability Connection? And then let's start to kind of go back in time a little bit. What got you interested, and what's your path that ultimately led to, in fact, you being selected this year for one of the One Coast Community Leaders Awards? So let's kind of start from the beginning. But before we do that, what is Disability Connection?
What is? Well, our mission is creating a connected community, and we help everybody, but we specialize in helping people with disabilities. And we did a turn after Hurricane Katrina and focused all of our energy in helping people with disabilities get re-engaged in the community. And so we have a myriad of programs that I can tell you a lot of them, but it's everything from employment to our website with 150 pages of travel information for South Mississippi. We have 3 documentaries, 40-something videos. We have built 2 playgrounds. We are now working on the first wilderness trail for the state. We've done a lot of beach activities, sports clinics, huge events. And every day we do the community resource guide is our prize, where the whole 6 counties get free copies of a resource guide to help people in need. We do free medical, and just every day we help people with resources. So what we've become today is very engaged in all 6 counties of Mississippi.
Well, you actually started out doing film and video and stuff like that, and then you've ultimately adapted that. Tell that story.
Well, in 2002, actually, Chris Snyder came to me, my brother-in-law, and said, we need a film to help the family organizations in tourism. And so I went door to door for 3 counties and got all the big boys, all the families to get together. And we produced a film called Destination Gulf Coast. And it was wonderful. We still have copies of it. And then we did a film called Hello, I'm Alice Mosley, about the wonderful folk artist storyteller from Bay St. Louis, and it still shows in her museum. And then we started a third project, another film project called Recreation for People with Disabilities. Well, I'm very passionate about disability for 3 big reasons. One, my daughter is 41 and was born my first child with developmental disabilities. And so when I went to the doctor and she was diagnosed, he said, well, just take her home and love her. There's nothing you can do. She's going to die in a few years. Very discouraging. And I said, that's not what I want for my child. And I was determined to make a difference for her and others like her. And then the second thing was there was a book, Past the Pain, and it was about all our veterans coming home from overseas. And they're 18, 19, and they had post-traumatic stress, but they didn't want to be counseled. They wanted fishing and girlfriends and bowling, and they wanted to get back to a real active life, and it was hard to find that back then. And then the third thing was my brother has multiple sclerosis. He lives in Houston. He came for a visit, and I couldn't find anything for him to do. So he was in a wheelchair. So I got really passionate. This was about the time of Hurricane Katrina in 2005. And when Hurricane Katrina hit, everything was destroyed, as is, all of us went through a lot. And so in 2007, my board came back to me and said, this is too big a project. we need to do this. So we just did a DBA, doing business as Disability Connection, and started doing events, programs, projects, anything that would help people with a variety of disabilities get re-engaged in the community. So our passion started in 2007 with the Arbor Day Run Walk Roll, which we've done every year since. It's a huge event with 100 people with disabilities joining the running club for an annual event. We do the art fair with 1,000 people, bringing in 600 kids and adults with intellectual disabilities for a free day of art classes. And we bring in all the major museums for that. You know, the Oro O'Keeffe, the Lynn Meadows, the Mary C., the Weltrans, we bring them all in to help us. So we do that wonderful event. We do the community resource fair, the guide. I mean, the playgrounds, like I said, we took one thing at a time, and it just evolved. We've done 34 ramps. We've done a lot of employment training. We do entrepreneur training. We help people start businesses. There's probably nothing you could name that we haven't put our finger in. And, you know, we're a small organization. We are in Ocean Springs City Hall is an office, and then we have an office in Gulfport on Pass Road. And we are closed now, but we have never closed during COVID. We've always answered the phone and helped people in need, and we've always answered our email. We stayed focused. So there's been a lot of people we've helped when the nonprofits all closed that were desperate, and we stayed, you know, focused. We delivered diapers to people's doorstep. We delivered emergency food to their doorstep. We've actually set up three medical beds since COVID started, and delivered a lot of wheelchairs. So these are one of the things
I love the idea. As I mentioned, you were a One Coast Award recipient, and
yes.
We started the Sun Herald Leadership Awards back in 2002. And when we had this vision for the Community Leaders Award, we had people like you in mind. These people who were leveraging their knowledge of needs in the community and finding ways to fill gaps. I talk about this all the time, that it takes a village to run a community like Coastal Mississippi. There are so many nonprofits that work together, and you know, some of them kind of cross over, and it doesn't matter, because essentially what we're trying to do is make sure the needs get met. But in your case, what I love about your story is that obviously you had your personal reasons for wanting to launch such an effort. But when we think about Coastal Mississippi being a great place to live, work, and play, we're not really completing that circle if we don't make it also a great place to live, work, and play for people with disabilities. And I think it helps to have conversations with people like you to remind the audience that there are really a lot of people with needs in Coastal Mississippi. I'm wondering if you have sort of the latest on data on the number of disabled in Coastal Mississippi.
Well, I know about 10% of children have a disability, and overall about 20% of the population. And what I don't think people realize is that although we might be serving one person that has a disability, they always have their friends, their family, their siblings. And for example, building this trail, working on a wilderness trail, I found out there's not one wilderness trail in the state. Well, my thinking is, you know, I have a son who's an Eagle Scout, Boy Scout, and I thought, okay, you have an Eagle Scout troop with one kid in a wheelchair. They're not going to want to go do the trail and leave that one child behind. So yes, the trail affects him, but it also affects not only his family, his friends, his Boy Scout troop, his church, people who his school, because we don't want to leave that person behind. You know, when we built the two playgrounds, one of the things was when I went to the school, they told me that there'll be a classroom with 50 people and one child has a disability. And during playground recess, that child had to stay in. And I said, that's not acceptable. And, you know, most schools are not wheelchair accessible. So these are things that, you know, we're always positive. We want to always say we're not the ADA police, but we want to help fix that so that that child, that adult, that veteran that has a disability feels engaged in the community. You know, we remember kids need to go to a playground that have a wheelchair, it's very difficult to do, public playgrounds. But we have to remember there are adults in wheelchairs that have children, and they cannot go to play at the playground. And if we all realize that, I think we would invest more in helping this segment of our population that has been neglected.
It really got my attention, for example, when you launched the partnership with the city of Ocean Springs to build a playground there. that, you stated like 900 children had some form of disabilities in just the city of Ocean Springs alone. I think that probably gets people's attention. And I know that they're on a continuum, some to severe to moderate. But the reality is, you were really focused in your partnership with Ocean Springs. This is just one example. There's so many examples to create a playground that was incredibly accessible. I've seen pictures of it, but for, this is a radio audience and a podcast. Can you describe what it looks like and what you did specifically?
You're talking about the Ocean Springs Little Children's Park.
Yes.
Correct. Yes. So we went to the park, and it had wonderful playground equipment, but we added a zip line, which everybody, disability or not, loves a zip line. We did put a zip line in, and it's accessible, so that they can get to it and get away from it. We did one big piece that 2 wheelchairs can get on the playground equipment, and then it moves like a big boat, so they can play with their friends. And then we have like a merry-go-round, which has sides, so even someone with very little physical ability to hold on could safely do the merry-go-round.
Let's do this, Janie. Let's go to the break, and when we come back, we'll finish your description of the Ocean Springs playground for children with disabilities. This is Janie O'Keefe, who's the Executive Director of Disability Connection.
Hey, want to come work for the #1 radio group on the coast? TeleSouth Media has a great opportunity for an outside sales consultant. Get paid while having fun and work in the exciting, fast-paced world of radio. We have award-winning stations like 97.9 CPR Rocks, 105.9 The Monkey, G96.7, SuperTalk 103.1, and 103.5 The Possum. Take the first step towards a new and rewarding career. Submit your resume to Jesse@telesouth.com. That's JESSE@telesouth.com. TeleSouth Media is an equal employment opportunity employer.
Hey, I'm Steve Azar, and you never know who or what you'll hear when I spend a Mississippi Minute with my friends. We're with the fabulous Norbert Putnam, as he played on so many hit records, you can't count them, and produced for some of the biggest acts ever. Norbert, Elvis.
And I want to tell you about Presley. He had 2 different voices. He would sit and talk to me in a very calm, low voice. And we were at Stack's one night, and we were having lunch. We always had lunch at midnight because he was nocturnal. We sat there and we have our sandwiches, and at 1 o'clock, he looked up. He said, "Hey, Put, come on, it's time for me to go beat Elvis." And he stood up, and a much deeper voice, he put on his macho voice. "Hey, fellas, it's 1 o'clock. Let's get cracking, okay?"
In a Mississippi Minute.
Be sure to check out In a Mississippi Minute with me, Steve Azar, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi, Amazon Alexa, and now on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher.
You could be spreading the coronavirus without realizing you have it, so do your part and stay home. It's important to limit in-person interaction with anyone outside of your immediate household, but phone and video chat are safe ways to connect. It's also important to limit social gatherings. If you need essential items like food and medicine, try using a delivery service. If you must leave your house for essential items, or if you want to take a walk for exercise, make sure to wear a cloth face covering. Stay at least 6 feet away from other people. Try not to touch frequently touched surfaces like light signals, street signs, or benches. And wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds as often as possible. This advice applies to people of any age, including teens and younger adults. It takes all of us to slow the spread of the coronavirus, so stay home unless absolutely necessary. Visit coronavirus.gov for the latest information.
Feeling down? Here's your prescription for a daily dose of good news and positive vibes. Good Things with Rebecca Turner. Every afternoon, Rebecca highlights all the good things happening right here in the state you call home. Daily exposure to Good Things with Rebecca Turner may cause smiling, feelings of positivity, happiness, and even laughter. When you experience these symptoms, tell your friends to listen.
Okay.
Weekdays starting at 2 p.m. here on SuperTalk Mississippi, and now on Amazon Alexa devices. Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. I have Janie O'Keefe, who's the Executive Director for Disability Connection. And the first half, we really just talked about her passion, where it came from, family members who are disabled, I think will get your attention. And then you start to think about what are the resources available to you, and you find that there are not enough. We need to do a better job as a community bringing all those resources into one sort of portal so people can have the information they need, a place that people can call and get the answers they need, and a group of people led by Janie who can partner with cities to do any number of different things, including what we were talking about when we went to the break, a playground for disabled children that is accessible. If you were in the process of describing it, Janie, why don't you just continue that?
Well, I think I pretty much described it. The idea was we added 5 pieces of equipment that everybody, all the children and adults, could participate with a disability or without. So it's a great place they can bring their friends. A school can come during field trip. And that was one of the things we talked to Ocean Springs School. And with so many children, this way, when the school goes for field trip, there are pieces of equipment that the child with the disability in a wheelchair can participate in.
Have you partnered with Coastal Mississippi Tourism?
We have not specifically now the first video, of course, before the disability, when we did the Destination Gulf Coast, we did some things. But lately, we have a lot of partners, and we do think it has a big impact on tourism, but we have not actually done a specific task with them.
Yeah, I'll make that introduction. I have Milton Segura, the executive director for the Coastal Mississippi tourism effort, on the show on a regular basis. Good. And he's a visionary, and he gets it. And the opportunity to sort of connect the kind of work that you're doing with the families that may visit here who have kids or family members that could be disabled, it would be a terrific marriage, I believe. So I'll be happy to introduce the two of y'all so that you can, make something good happen. So,
well, quickly, I'll tell you, we have one we're working on it right now called The Connection, and it's going to have travel and recreation, not only for local, but statewide, nationally, and worldwide. Specific things for people with disabilities to engage in travel, recreation, sports, and socialization. So hopefully in a few months, we'll open that. And so I know that he would be interested in that.
Hey, so tell me as you pointed out, you have physical locations in Gulfport and Ocean Springs, and because of COVID, the offices aren't open, but it doesn't mean you're not answering the phone and dealing with all kinds of requests. So I'm curious about what does a day in the life of Janie and your team look like?
Well, Kelly, my 41-year-old special daughter, does live at home, so I'm also a caregiver, and I'm a grandma. That's my hobby. I see my grandchildren as often as I can. So I get Kelly rolling. I've been coming to the office most days. It's just that we're not open to the public. So I do still work 40 hours a week. And then in my free time, I just spend time with my kids and my grandkids as much as I can. And I go to social events when COVID allows. That's been a little more difficult, but I'm very average.
So you're very not average, actually. So I'm curious, when the phone rings, give us an idea of the kind of requests that you get.
Oh my gosh. Well, of course they change. And right now we're getting a lot of people cannot pay their mortgage, their electric bill. They still need medical equipment. They need food, all the fears that a lot of people through COVID have. They want jobs, but right now with unemployment being generous, they're not actually asking for help with employment. But I feel like in a couple of months, that's going to really get crazy, helping people get back to employment. So we help people get on disability. We don't make it a regular habit of that, but if they're having trouble and maybe they need an extra voice to Social Security, we will step in and help with that. I just can't. We put a roof on a house. We've done 34 ramps. It really, secondary education, getting back in school. Maybe they've gotten out of prison and they need a little extra help getting an ID, even things like that. Now, we do partner. We're small. We have to partner with all the other agencies because we can't serve individually every person that calls, but we have a good relationship. I've always said the Gulf Coast is a wonderful place to live because we all work together to help the community. We're not working against each other. So if I don't have a piece of medical equipment, I'll call around, they call me. We work together for the benefit of the community.
So, Janie, you've published a couple of books. You wrote one in 2007 called With All My Heart. Tell me about that book.
Well, in 1977, I made a commitment to become a Christian and really change my way. I wasn't really happy with the way I had lived my life and decided that I was going to make some changes. So With All My Heart is really a story of, my daughter was born with brain damage, all the things in life, low income. I've actually experienced homelessness, being homeless. And so that's actually my second book, is Homeless by God's Design. So really the two kind of work together, but it talks about the fact that it's all something, we have this God-given ability to pull up our bootstraps, and we can do most anything we want to do, but we just have to work hard and love everybody and just, kind of turn the lemons to lemonade. So basically the first book is just to encourage. It's very, very easy, simple, small book. I give away free books about basically how to, pull yourself up when you face something like a child born with a disability or a death in the family. There, you can do two things when those tragedies happen, and they will happen. You can turn toward God and toward love and encouraging and just making the best of it, or you can get very negative. So my book is basically saying I chose a certain way, and I encourage others to take that, make the best of what they have and help others who have maybe gone through the same thing.
Well, it's wonderful for you to put that down. I've had some adversity in my life, early in my life, and I always talked about the time afterwards as a fork in the road, and that I had a choice to make. And I think it's my parents instilled in me this need to be positive and want to contribute. So, but I consciously said, I'm going to choose the fork in the road that would make my parents proud. And that's kind of the approach that I took. That was the thing that motivated me. And then I was really kind of doggedly determined after that. But it was, just important times in your life. And I think, like you pointed out, people face those forks in the road, and they have an opportunity to make a choice. I really appreciate you sharing that part of your life with me. What I'm curious about is, where did your desire to participate in the community come from? Because it would take me the rest of the show to list everything you've been involved in throughout your life. But where did that come from? This need to give back to the community?
I don't know. I love people, and I love the interaction of being with people. I was in radio and television advertising for 30 years. And so that was pretty much coming out of college. That was where I started my passion. And when you are in that job, you have to become a people person, and you're going door to door. You're not making any money, but you're going door to door. And it just sort of put in me this love to meet new people and to experience things. And you hear a lot of stories. You hear people who are struggling, and that I love the ability to help people work through those tough places and come out on the other side. I am now an ordained minister. I don't talk about that, but I have over the years, become that because it was sort of a natural path for me. But I have a big family. I have 5 kids. And like I said, I have, all my grandchildren, and I don't know. I'm part of the O'Keefe family. I'm one of Jerry O'Keefe's daughter-in-laws. So of course Jerry and his children are very active in the community, and it just sort of happened. My dad was military, and I always say, we had to move every 3 years. Well, when you're growing up, that sounds real negative, but actually I think it's huge positive, because it forces you to make change in your life and not get settled. It forces you to get out of your box, or you make no friends. So I just think it's the way that life was set up for me. And it's what makes me happy. It's what makes me thrive. When I think about retiring, I'm already 71. I can't imagine staying home and gardening and reading a book. I mean, it's a great thing to do occasionally, but when I get up, I love to come to work, and I love what I do. So the money,
Janie, we have
matter.
1 minute left. I'm just, if people want to get in touch with you to talk about Disability Connections, how can they reach you?
Well, the website has a lot of good information, disabilityconnection.org, and our resource guide is there. It is downloadable. And then our phone number, our main number is 228-604-4020. We do have Facebook, Twitter. We are on social network. We'd love them to join us. So we have an e-newsletter if they give us their email. I'm office at disabilityconnection.org, but we will let them know all the events in the community.
Janie, thank you so much, and God bless you. I appreciate you taking the time to share your passion with me.
Thank you so much for letting me come on.
When we come back, we're going to replay a segment of my conversation with Dr. Nicholas Conger from Memorial Hospital. He's an infectious disease internist by popular demand. We'll hear that after we come back from the break.
Everyone knows the only thing better than pizza is free pizza, and right now, buy a $10 gift certificate to CiCi's Pizza for only $5. It's like buying a pizza and getting a pizza for free. Go to our station's website or Facebook. Look for the Half Off Deals logo to purchase this amazing deal right now.
What decisions are being made by state lawmakers, and how will they affect you, your family, and community? If you listen, you'll know. SuperTalk Mississippi, the SuperTalk app, and at supertalk.fm.
Hi, I'm Billy Kinder, host of Big Billy Kinder Outdoors. Here the show Saturdays at 1, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Turkeys, whitetail, Grenada Lake crappie, or Gulfport redfish. We enjoy it all, especially when you're in camp with us on SuperTalk Mississippi.
The Dean's List with Janice Dean.
A compassionate young man who became a dinner companion for a stranger makes today's Dean's List. Lisa Mealander and her family had been eating at the Eaton Park in Belle Vernon, Pennsylvania, when she noticed how her server was interacting with a senior patron. The server, Dylan Teetle, had dropped to one knee so he could give his full attention to the gentleman. Lisa wrote on Facebook, "The man apologized for not hearing well, and he talked about how he lost his hearing during the war. He was 91 years old with many stories to tell, and Dylan patiently listened, giving him his full attention. He also helped the man figure out a meal from the menu before putting the order into the kitchen." Lisa tried to flag Dylan down so she could offer to pay for the man's meal. Dylan said someone else had already taken care of the check. Before leaving her table, Lisa snapped pictures of Dylan chatting with the senior and published them to Facebook, where they have been since shared thousands of times. Thank you, Dylan, for your kindness, and Lisa for sharing this story with all of us. Janice Dean, Fox News.
Thousands of Bulldog fans have subscribed to the Thunder and Lightning podcast. Have you? On each episode, Brian Haydad and Joel Coleman give you an inside look at your Mississippi State Bulldogs. The Thunder and Lightning podcast is free and available on demand at supertalk.fm and on your smartphone. Just search for Thunder and Lightning on iTunes, Google Play, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thunder and Lightning from SuperTalk Mississippi, covering the Bulldogs like no one else. Staying informed is a full-time job, even more so during an election year. That's why SuperTalk is here. With Fox News, News Mississippi, and the Super Talkers, you'll go inside the campaigns, and we'll separate what's real from what's not to bring you the latest information that matters. From now until you go into the voting booth on November 3rd, your election headquarters is Super Talk Mississippi. Available on the Super Talk app and at supertalk.fm. From the Gallo Radio Show archives.
In the house, Mike Hurst.
When I started at the end of 2017, sadly, our office had gotten so low during the last administration. I think in FY16, we prosecuted 11 illegal immigration cases, 11, which is embarrassing. First year I was there, we had jumped almost 700% to 77 prosecutions. And Paul, that number I think is going to increase very much more this year. We are continuing to see illegal immigration impact crime around the state. I'll give you a perfect example. About a month ago, we prosecuted an illegal alien who had brought 9 kilos of heroin and 1 kilo of fentanyl through our state. Now, to give your listeners an idea of what 2.2 pounds of fentanyl will do, that will wipe out 1 million people, Paul. That'll wipe out a third of our state.
This has been another Gallo Radio Show audio archive.
We know that we're asking Americans to do a lot right now. So we're asking everyone to be selfless for others so that we can protect those who are most susceptible to this virus.
A question I often get asked is, why should young people care about the spread of coronavirus? Well, we know that people with underlying medical conditions over the age of 60 are at highest risk, but they've got to get it from somebody.
Social distancing is really physical separation of people.
It's what we refer to when we ask people to stay at least 6 feet apart.
Not going to bars, not going to restaurants, not going to theaters where there are a lot of people. It all just means physical separation so that you have a space between you and others who might actually be infected or infect you.
We all have a role to play in preventing person-to-person spread of this disease, which can be deadly for vulnerable groups. For more information on how you can social distance, please go to coronavirus.gov.
Anybody can be a firefighter, male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers, we have leaders in business.
It's me, you, anyone that wants to be.
There is no typical firefighter.
If a muckety-muck wants you to hear what they gotta say, they come here first and sit down with Gallo and JT. This is ground zero for all Mississippi muckety-mucks. SuperTalk Mississippi. Watch your favorite SuperTalk shows in HD. Just go to supertalktv.com. Ever wonder what goes on in the studio during the shows? Now you can watch what happens in HD. SuperTalk TV, streaming now on supertalktv.com. Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We have Dr. Nicholas Conger, an infectious disease internist at Memorial Hospital at Gulfport, and a real good friend to the show's pandemic, and he's given a lot of practical advice. So, Dr. Conger, let's go now to this headline from the Guardian, and it's going to zero us in on your most practical advice. So here it is. Another disconnect is at play here. Face mask deniers are so obsessed with their own personal liberty that they don't seem to realize that in reality, the scientific reality, they're infringing upon other people's liberty, in that by refusing to wear the face mask, they risk becoming coronavirus super spreaders, endangering the health of everybody that they meet, touch, and spray. Explain that.
Well, I do. I agree with the sentiment of that article. So there are lots of data that shows that people are asymptomatic, but spreading it several days before they start getting the fevers. And you just don't know if you fall into that category or not. And so those are the people who we need to wear masks. And so you will not know it's needed until after the fact. And we did talk a little bit about that airborne spread like a gas. And I told you, I think that's a minimal way this is spread. And then people are concentrating on the hand washing and the gloves. I think that is a minimal way this is spread. I think the most common way by far this virus is spread is by talking close to other people, especially indoors when there's not good airflow. And so, to me, my son told me, I didn't verify it, but my son told me he saw something that said more people said they'd rather be ordered indoors and out with a mask. To me, that blows my mind. Like, why would you not want that? And to me, your ticket to freedom is agreeing to wear a mask in indoor spaces, because I would much rather do that than have another stay-at-home order. And so my key is indoor spaces. You should wear a mask pretty much at all times, with a few exceptions. Like if there's a huge warehouse with lots of airflow and people are working 20 feet away, well, that's different. But indoors and outdoors when you're really crowded, if you're at rallies or protests or at a ball game or something like that, if there's crowding and you're sitting close to people, then I would wear one outdoors. But man, I think that's so important to decrease the spread of this virus. And again, a study, I think, mathematically said that mask wearing indoors would do the same thing as stay-at-home orders.
Yeah, well, there you go. You mentioned offline about you're concerned about mask fatigue, and that's a good point. In other words, if you're indoors, wear it. If you're outdoors and you're not in close proximity to other people, like if you go to the beach and you go with, as you and I have talked about in the past, with your family unit and you guys stay together, that's fine. But if you've got another family nearby that you don't know, and there's a possibility, and y'all end up having a conversation in close proximity to each other, you probably should put a mask on. But the key is just do social distancing when you're outdoors, and that's your best advice, isn't it?
Yeah, you see both sides. There's the mask deniers, which is a problem because they are helpful. And then you got the mask shamers that will, go up to somebody, walking their baby 20 yards away, or someone mowing their yard by themselves and scream at them and shame them for not wearing one. And those scenarios are extreme on both sides. Let's just be practical about it.
So let's do this. Oh, by the way, before I shift gears, I noticed someone inside their car the other day, by themselves in the car, wearing a mask. That's not necessary. Then you pointed out, if you're by yourself in a taxi cab, that's a different situation, isn't it?
Oh yeah. So just the thought. Just think about an enclosed space without good airflow. A car is a perfect example. That's why we worry about medical fields, because you have an exam room where someone may sit and cough in this room that doesn't have airflow. So just think, if you go in a situation and you realize there's a lot of people in this building, there's not a lot of good airflow, everyone needs to be wearing a mask, and just stick to that principle and you're good.
So this is my friend James O'Byrne, who I worked with in New Orleans. He's a multiple Pulitzer Prize winning writer and editor. And now he lives in France. So he's been in France for, I think, a couple of years now. Don't remember exact time frame, but obviously he's been there during the entire pandemic. And he said this, that as it relates to people wanting to blame the media for hysteria around the pandemic, here's what he says. I don't think you can blame this one on the media. The media aren't beating up retail workers who ask people to comply with mask requirements. That's an example of America, what he calls exceptionalism. In other words, for some reason, we got this a little bit better than maybe some of these other countries have it, or at least a handle on it. And that America is the only place where mask wearing has become political, that people react violently to being required to wear one. And then he goes on to talk about other things. But it is really unfortunate that we have found ourselves in a position where a mask has become political. That should be the most apolitical thing in the universe right now. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I don't have much to add to that. To me, wearing a mask or not wearing a mask doesn't show your allegiance to one party or the other.
The next point he makes is, and I'll just paraphrase it, he essentially says this, that some people are saying we didn't need to shut the economy down. And you and I have talked about this before. But to some extent, by reopening the economy and not using the tools at our disposal, like social distancing, hand washing, not touching our face, face mask, protecting the vulnerable, by not doing those things, we put at risk all the work that we did during the shutdown to get things under control and to understand what we were facing. I mean, the truth is we were facing a disease we needed to learn a lot more about. But at the end of the day, he contrasts that with what they did in Europe, where they're beginning to sort of reopen. And he makes the point that just about every country kind of messed it up in the beginning because we didn't really understand what we were dealing with. But then, some used the data and began to slowly reopen, and they've made adjustments to how they recover from the lockdown that they were in. But the truth is that in America we are in some respects kind of blowing it by reopening the economy and thinking that everything's fine, because we could end up triggering some kind of a setback. And it's not too late, is it? It's not too late for people to pay attention and protect themselves, is it?
Yeah, so I've said all along, it's not when you reopen, it's how you reopen. That's more important than the when. A lot of the southern states and the warm weather states really didn't have the first wave, so they were kind of shut down and flattening a curve that was already flattened. So they really hadn't had their first wave. So as we reopened, I expected a little bit of a bump, again, not to this magnitude, but certainly, so how you come out of it is very important. And, and Americans love their freedom. That is absolutely true. and after that lockdown, getting that little bit of freedom, it is definitely spreading. But remember, the goal of the lockdown was so that we can get our act together with our testing, which by and large we have. There's starting to be some roadblocks now because we are testing so much, we're running out of supplies again. It was to get our therapeutics down, and I believe the therapeutics are better. We are treating patients better, and we've had much better outcomes in my hospital this month than we did 2 months ago. And then for hospitals to get their plans with the ventilators, if they're needed. Actually, we're using ventilators much less, but the staffing and to have their coronavirus wards and all that. So the shutdown did allow us all of that. The goal right now is to not overwhelm the healthcare system while we open up. And again, if we opened up a little bit better with less cases, then that'd be a lot less likely. So we'll see what happens the next week or two there.
So here's James's next point, and this has to do with the focus on the death rate. People are, focused on death rate these days, and he says this: the focus on death rates for COVID-19 failed to miss an important point that is emerging about the virus. It does a lot of permanent damage, well documented in the medical research today. This is not the flu. It destroys lung tissue, damages organs, and leaves a host of recurring chronic health problems for many of all ages, including people we know who had it and recovered many months ago. Ask someone who hasn't had it and doesn't know someone who has, and that's a lot of people. And they'll say it only afflicts the old and vulnerable. But what doctors see is different, more insidious picture of a devastating and formidable foe that diminishes lives and can't be taken lightly. What's your thoughts about that?
I think that the jury is still out on the true chronic nature. I mean, we're talking a couple of months. I do think there are clearly people who do have some devastation from this disease. That may be a bit overstated, though. There are plenty of people who have had this and don't even know they've had it. And so there are clearly. So I think there's three groups. Obviously, there's a group that die from it. There's a group that have it and don't even know that they have it. And then there is going to be a group that has it and it is going to cause some long-term damage. So I agree with the sentiment, but I don't know if it's necessarily all that bleak for everyone who catches this virus. And, I do think we're going to find that there are two strains out there. And I think that we're going to find that the strain out there right now is the less virulent of the two. And again, I'm not downplaying it. I want our numbers to be better, clearly. But if there is this mutation that has allowed for increased spreading with decreased virulence, that would be good, even for those patients with the chronic damage going ahead.
And, and the last point he made is, and he called it sort of this insidious idea that it's only killing old people, and that for some reason that's okay. And that's really kind of an unfortunate side effect of all this, isn't it?
Yeah, obviously that's not okay. We mourn for every life lost. I agree with that. Although, this virus is very unique. Most viruses affect very young and the very old, and this one really does really affect the very old. So it is a unique virus, but I agree. Any death is an extra death if we don't want.
Well, listen, it's been a pleasure, Dr. Conger, to talk to you again. We'll be back in touch with you in 2 or 3 weeks and see what the latest is. But, because we're learning something new every day, the headlines change literally every day. So I look forward to the next time we talk.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. We'll be back after this break.
Subscribe for free to the Coast View podcast on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, I'm Steve Azar, and you never know who or what you'll hear when I spend a Mississippi Minute with my friends. Talking to Paul Thorne, Mississippi true treasure, really incredible recording artist, singer-songwriter, has been doing it a long time, doing it the right way.
It's almost like a Forrest Gump thing because, I was a boxer, / I worked in a furniture factory, / I had a gig 2 nights a week playing my acoustic guitar in a pizza restaurant, / I was in the National Guard, and,
wow.
All this stuff was going on at the same time. / I had a writing contract with Rick Hall and Fame.
In a Mississippi Minute.
Be sure to check out In a Mississippi Minute with me, Steve Azar, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi, the SuperTalk Mississippi app, and now available on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher.
Whether you're a Rebel, a Bulldog, a Golden Eagle, or just a sports fan, SuperTalk Mississippi has got a podcast for you. Sports Talk Mississippi, the Rebel Report, Thunder and Lightning, the SuperTalk Eagle Hour, and the Borky Show are all now available for you. And it's all free. Get them all on demand at supertalk.fm and on your smartphone. Just search for SuperTalk on iTunes, Google Play, or anywhere you listen to podcasts.
We give HPV vaccine to children at 11 or 12 years of age. I have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, and I've given the vaccine to all of them.
Let me know if you're en route. 49 Adams, the unconscious, Main Street and West Road, 49 Adams.
A lot of people are just worried about supplies.
Our supplies are getting pretty low, and that gives us great concern.
Aside from the PPE issues, they're really worried about if they are exposed and they have to be away from work for a certain amount of time.
We're going to need some money there. And so that's one way the public can support us as well, is keep sending money into that support fund.
What I really truly hope is that people don't forget that feeling right now of wanting to volunteer and give back to their community.
I hope this doesn't dramatically change the volunteer fire service.
Feeling down? Here's your prescription for a daily dose of good news and positive vibes. Good Things with Rebecca Turner. Every afternoon, Rebecca highlights all the good things happening right here in the state you call home. Daily exposure to Good Things with Rebecca Turner may cause smiling, feelings of positivity, happiness, and even laughter. When you experience these symptoms, tell your friends to listen.
Okay.
Weekdays starting at 2 p.m. here on SuperTalk Mississippi and now on Amazon Alexa devices. Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. That was an awesome conversation with Janie O'Keefe. The work that she's doing in the area of disabilities in coastal Mississippi is so important. I loved talking to people who bring such a passion to the conversation. And then we replayed a segment from my conversation earlier this week with Dr. Nicholas Conger. He's an infectious disease doctor. He's a great friend to the show. He's got such a practical view toward the pandemic. And we hope that by hearing that again by popular demand that you get something from it. Wear a face mask. Practice social distancing. You know the story. So anyway, we're going to I want to turn to Kyle for a second. Kyle, are you there, buddy?
I am here.
Yes. One of the things that I mean, talking about Janie O'Keefe, I can't help but think about Brian and Marie Sanderson and their passionate work in the community to create that Mississippi 30-Day Fund. I mean, we're really lucky to have leaders in this community who are willing to step up, aren't we?
Yes, we are. I think that whole initiative there is really something that you kind of hope to find more small businesses to learn about it, to be able to reach out for it and see if it can help them.
Yeah, and I want to see more grants coming from corporations and those businesses that are doing well. They're thinking about how they can help somebody. If you missed that conversation with Brian and Marie this week, go listen to it. The Mississippi 30-Day Fund is a nonprofit where 100% of the proceeds go back to small business. There's not a nonprofit in our community right now that can fill gaps like this. So their work is so important. I'm so impressed. I know you are too.
I really am. The fact that they pretty much do that out of their drive to help Mississippi, they're not taking any kind of benefit for themselves out of it. It's all of their time, all of their efforts, their passion. That right there says a lot.
It really does. I enjoyed my conversation with Kiva Scott from the Boys and Girls Club, and I always remember that part of the conversation when we talked about where when you looked at kids in the eye, it's hard to say no to either contribute or volunteer or to support the Boys and Girls Club of the Gulf Coast. How can you say no to an organization that's doing so much good that can really unleash a kid's career?
You know, Ashley Edwards said she's a rock star, and it didn't take long into that interview to realize how much of a rock star she really was.
Yeah, there's been a lot of good interviews, man. I think one of my favorite, there's been a lot of favorites, but my pandemic diversion conversation with Brad Arnold, that was fun, wasn't it?
It was. It was good to catch up with Brad. It's good to see him enjoying life on a sober side. It's good to see that he's actually enjoying everything that he does now, and he can remember it, and he's just in a good place in his heart.
Yeah, tens of millions of records, downloads at YouTube, or tens of millions. I mean, he is a songwriting genius. It's incredible, and the relationship between him and CPR is so important. CPR is part of the reason why we have a Three Doors Down today.
Yeah, he is. I remember that like it was kind of yesterday. I mean, it was just kind of surreal how it happened.
Why don't we let's turn to the video and kind of end the show today with sharing that segment of the conversation I had with Brad about how Charlie Daniels, given that Charlie Daniels died this week, everybody's remembering him. He touched so many different people, but Charlie Daniels literally saved Brad's life. Let's play that segment from the conversation where he talks about that. What was amazing to me is that when you were in Japan on tour and you came to the realization that you had to get help, you reached out to somebody, and that somebody may literally change your life, might have saved your life, but it was Charlie Daniels and his wife.
Absolutely.
Tell about it.
It was. I was sitting in Japan, and I mean, I don't really remember a whole lot about that week. We was on a Navy tour over there, and we were going to play some shows for them, and I was sitting in my like barracks room that night and just drunk as a skunk, and I knew that I needed to change, and I needed to talk to somebody, and Chris had found sobriety, Greg had found sobriety, and they had never preached at me about it. They encouraged me. They had mentioned little things here and there in the most encouraging way that you could ever ask for. But it wasn't my time yet, but I seen it, and the seeds had been planted. They had already planted the seeds, and I was sitting there, and I needed to talk to somebody, and I called a couple of friends. I called one person, they didn't answer, and they called another person, they didn't answer. And I'd had some conversations with Mr. Charlie, and I know that he's a fine Christian man, and I know that he's gone through some wilder times in his life. And I said, and I guess alcohol had my filter taken off, and I said, I'm gonna call Mr. Charlie, and I called Mr. Charlie. Yeah, Mr. Charlie, he answered the phone that night, and I just sat there and I just cried to him. I could sit there and cried on the phone probably an hour, talking to him and his wife, and they had compassion for me. He understood. He didn't get on to me, and I just told him what was the problem, and he told me what he thought the solution was, and within that solution included, he said, well, son, he said, when you get back, he said, they got some good treatment places here in Tennessee, and I think you probably need to go to one if you're serious about it. I said, well, I'm going. And then we left to come home the day after that, and the promoter who put on the tour, when we got back to the airport, he also told me, he said, Brad, he's a really nice man. He said, Brad, I want to tell you, he said, I found a chaplain last night on that base, and me and him said a prayer for you. He said, I'm worried about you. I said, I'm going to rehab when I get home. And I called my wife. And when I got home, I called her that night. I called her before I even left, and I said, I'm going. And I was said it ugly. And but in a nutshell, I said, I'm going to rehab when I get home. And I went. It's the best thing I ever did.